friends and explorers Ed Stafford and Luke Collier have set themselves an incredible mission.
Everyone we speak to says it's impossible. That only encourages us to go and do it more.
To be the first people to walk the entire length of the Amazon River.
I'm going to this trip knowing full well that I might not step out of the jungle again.
It's over 7,000 kilometers of the toughest terrain on the planet, teeming with deadly wildlife and a battleground for the criminal drug trade.
The guys just back there, they advised us to run.
They will have to cross a vast mountain range, descend the world's deepest valley, and enter South America's most remote jungles.
It's a bit of its tail.
On a 2.5-year journey of a lifetime to conquer the world's largest river. Ed Stafford is a 32-year-old ex-army captain who worked in Afghanistan with the United Nations and is a veteran adventure guide. For 12 months, he has been meticulously planning an extraordinary expedition to be the first person to complete the world's longest jungle trek.
As a kid, I can remember listening to stories from my dad about David Livingstone, the Scottish explorer in the Victorian times who explored huge parts of Africa. And it's explorers such as him that have inspired me to be the first person to walk the length of the Amazon.
One of his most trusted colleagues and closest friends is 38-year-old Luke Collier, a mountaineer, kayaker, and expedition guide.
We've got between 4,000 and 4,500 miles to trek, and then we've got to try and navigate our way through no paths whatsoever from start to finish. We've obviously got to be quite cautious with this.
We took 2 video cameras with us, and we documented the whole expedition ourselves. There was no film crew. It was just literally us with a camera at arm's length, filming ourselves.
Mate, how do you feel?
Good, ready. Bag's not too bad. It's about 40-45 kilos. Ready to go.
On the 2nd of April 2008, Ed and Luke take their first steps eastward. They will divide their 7,000-kilometer walk into 4 sections. They will trek at altitude over the Andes to river's source at Nevado Mizmi. Next, they'll enter the Red Zone, Peru's violent drug smuggling area, and head north towards Brazil. The 3rd section will be an epic march over 2,000 kilometers of remote, unmapped jungle. Finally, they plan to cross the river at Manaus, where the 2 biggest tributaries meet, and follow it to the Atlantic Ocean. They hope to complete their journey in 18 months.
Everyone's waving enthusiastically and saying adios, locos. Goodbye, stupid people.
Joining the duo is their local guide, Osvaldo.
He was 24 years old, and it was having that person who was walking with us, who was part of the team, that everyone that we met could relate to.
Their first challenge is to find the source of the River Amazon at Nevado Mizmi, 5,000 meters above sea level in the Peruvian Andes. It'll be a 3-week walk. The main obstacle is the Colca Canyon, a chasm, plunging twice the depth of the Grand Canyon.
We can see the route now. We've got to cross the Colca Canyon, up over quite a barren plain. It's a long way away. Gotta be careful on my step. One little slip.
We've both been on our backside.
Look at the fucking drop. This is death. Right, be careful in all seriousness.
Yep.
Good. Right. You're right.
Yep.
Some of the passes that we had to do were very, very narrow paths, if there was a path at all, with very sheer drops of several hundred meters below us.
I'm giggling at nerves.
One mistake and we'd fall to our deaths.
They press on. But on the other side of the canyon, a frightening omen appears.
Jesus Christ. Well, I'm going to let you see for yourself.
These bones are human remains.
Christ, there's a whole body there with skin on it. Sorry, I'm not laughing, but this is quite weird. The guy that we picked up this morning, he said that there's this ancient cemetery of some Incas, and they used to use mummification. Bloody interesting. I don't think I've ever seen a mummified body before. Cool, right. We're off.
The party crosses one final pass before the giant vision of Nevada Mizmi comes into sight. From the mountain's glacier, 5,600 meters above sea level, the Amazon springs to life. A cross at the base of the mountain marks where the meltwater first spills from the rock.
Nice one, mate.
Ed and Luke have made it to the source of the Amazon.
That's us.
The peak of Mount Mizmi is where the snow first melts. So, to be sure they are starting from the Amazon's true source, they must climb the mountain.
We've only got to go just past this little cornice on his left.
They climb to 5,600 meters in temperatures of -3 degrees centigrade to reach the summit. But instead of the two trekkers celebrating the achievement between them, Luke pulls out his phone.
I was quite surprised, really, to see Luke get his phone out immediately to check if he had reception so that he could phone his fiancée, Katie.
Hello, we're on top of Nevada Mizmi.
I shouldn't really be surprised that Luke was doing that, because he does have someone outside of the expedition that he loves, and so that must make it quite difficult for him. And like me, he doesn't have anyone at all.
Time to descend before the temperature drops to -30 degrees. They follow the initial flow of the Amazon. It's hard to believe this tiny waterfall will become the largest river in the world. The meltwater having formed gullies, the Amazon then runs underground. It emerges 800 meters down the valley, rising to create a flowing marshland. Finally, all the streams converge to form the Apurimac River, the first official tributary of the Amazon. They've now spent 2 months together, living in each other's shadow 24/7, and they're starting to get on each other's nerves.
Bastard, you made that look fucking easy.
Sorry.
The trek is about to reach its most dangerous location. Ed's worried that Luke can't keep up, and tensions mount.
Luke, so, how's it looking? Shit, the ground is going from me as well.
And you always have somebody within the group that's slightly weaker, and you accommodate them and you go at their pace, and it's not really a drama.
Mate, are you right?
It was just not feeling like there was an equal there to share all the problem solving. We're all parts in just slightly being disillusioned in Luke.
Luke's about to die.
We have had some falling outs, and you know, I've come close to leaving this fucking expedition just because he's been completely unbearable.
With their friendship on a knife edge, Ed and Luke must tackle the world's deepest canyon together on a 40-day death march.
This is almost becoming a survival situation.
Trekkers Ed Stafford and Luke Collier, attempting to walk the entire length of the Amazon, have so far followed the river for 200 kilometers from its source in the Andes to the edge of the Apurimac Canyon.
Got to be careful on my step here. One little slip, and I don't know whether you can see, but it's quite a cheeky way down.
They are walking through the night to reach the tiny village of Kehu on the edge of the canyon.
Luke, how would you rate my judging distance skills earlier?
Shot it.
But over the last week, they've had a series of rows. And essential mutual support is starting to fall apart.
Ed and I had a fallout today,
Yeah, we're completely different people.
and inside I was fuming.
We can't get aggressive every time we disagree on something.
Exhausted and barely speaking, they reach the village.
Gracias, señor.
I think we're being directed to somewhere where you can sleep inside a house. Fantastic.
To their relief, they receive a warm welcome and try to put their differences aside over a meal with local farmers.
It's massive.
Huge plate
Grande.
of freshwater shrimps. Que increíble.
Not very private night's sleep, this one. Hola, dígame. Hola, chicos.
Hola.
But despite the beautiful food, Ed can tell Luke is not happy.
And I remember actually seeing Luke going up the hill doing the video diary and just sort of having that inner knowledge that he was saying bad things about me because he'd gotten so far away that I just knew that he had some stuff to get off his chest.
Sometimes I think he's the biggest cock in the world and just self-obsessed, narcissistic, definitely narcissistic, selfish, non-thinking, not caring about other people's personalities, feelings, whatever.
In the morning, Ed and Luke put their differences aside for their biggest challenge yet. The river is now channeled through the steep Apurimac Gorge, which runs for 160 kilometers until it widens out into lowland forest. This is the deepest gorge in the world.
And it's just absolutely stunning, stunning views.
After a 32-kilometer trek along its edge, they begin the 3,000-meter descent down to the river.
Coming down into the Apurimac Canyon, the most noticeable thing by far at the moment is the change in heat. And it's ridiculously hot.
The high canyon walls make it impossible to walk along the canyon edge. So Ed and Luke are constantly climbing and descending the hills of the Apurimac as they follow the river.
Doing what we thought would be an easy little jaunt along the river, but we've got to head up and over another spur.
The river has now picked up volume and speed as it twists through the canyon. But in order to follow its general direction, they are constantly crossing it. If they're lucky, they make use of old bridges or fly wires erected by local shepherds.
It looks a bit easier than this.
But usually, they have to cross on foot. The river is funneled through the canyon, creating strong, turbulent currents. If they slip, they'll be washed away, smashed into the rocks, and drowned.
Now that's going to be quite a strong current.
As a last resort, they swim.
How you doing?
I'm absolutely shattered.
Yeah, me too, mate.
Finally, after 48 days of arduous trekking over 125 ridges, they think the end of the Apurimac Canyon is in sight. They hope this will help ease the tensions between them.
We just come over the saddle of our last mountain. We then drop down to the Apurimac, and according to our maps, and if we stick to where we're going with the maps, we stick by the river from that point forward.
But their calculations are wrong. Instead of being able to follow the river comfortably at low altitude, they have one more ridge to tackle, the biggest so far in the searing midday heat.
This is where things started to get serious between Luke and I, and the expedition actually became compromised as a result, and things became quite serious and quite dangerous.
Luke makes his way directly up the steep slope. The others take the longer, slower, zigzagging route and track his progress as they climb.
Being the climber, I looked at the ways that the guides were choosing, and they didn't look particularly good. And so I chose straight up the middle of the basin, where there was gentle scree all the way, and it looked at the top like it was an easier climb than the rest. I was completely wrong.
It's soon clear he has run into serious problems.
Luke committed to a wrong decision that day. He was in front, and because of the fact we hadn't been getting on, he felt that it was sort of his own pride that was at stake, and that he had to continue what he'd committed to doing. And what he was attempting was ridiculous with the amount of weight he'd got on, and a slip, and he would have been rolling down the canyon side and to his death.
The spur is bigger than anything they have tackled on the river so far, and none of the team have packed enough water. Their guide, Oswaldo, tries to help.
Oswaldo had to take my bag off me for the last 20 metres of that climb. Just didn't have it in me. And the horrible thing is, Luke is still somewhere down on that mountainside.
It is really incredibly bad that we'd let it get to that stage where he was putting his life at risk because we were having this little emotional battle with each other.
Absolutely exhausted. This is almost becoming a survival situation. It's just silly. I wouldn't continue. If it wasn't for the fact we have no option, I have no water.
Desperate, Ed cuts up cactus and extracts the moisture inside by chewing the flesh. Eventually, 2 kilometers above the river, Luke rejoins the path, but he's in a terrible state. The pair are now both badly dehydrated.
Ground sheet got a bit wet last night.
They decide to wait out the night. Their young guides with local knowledge start the trek to the mountaintop village for water.
Every now and again it's quite good to be humbled, and lads have saved the day and have come back with about 8 litres of water.
The next day, rested and rehydrated, they press on. By midday, they make it to the village of Silapata.
Mate, we're here. Happy days. You okay?
Yeah. It was fantastic to actually get some fluids down us and to rehydrate. It just felt amazing. When the pressure was on, situations definitely brought us together and made me realise why we'd chosen to walk together. The shame was that the slightest thing only needed to happen in order for that to go out the window again, and in order for that negativity to creep back in, and in order for us to start questioning each other again, and that happened on many occasions.
Can only get better.
You fucking knobhead.
Getting grumpy.
I'm not getting grumpy, I'm just very hot.
With tensions simmering, they move east along the top of the gorge. After another day's walk, they descend again toward the river. But it isn't long before the arguments flare up.
Pathetic little things like Oswaldo having a blister could then send us back into this period of negativity and this period of getting at each other.
Ed was getting on my tits just with everything that was happening. He was concerned that by putting tape over an open blister, that when you took the tape off, that you'd take the skin off. Just repeated and repeated and repeated what he was saying, to the point where I thought, I've had enough.
Instead of just having a difference of opinion, Luke got really angry. And I didn't know why.
Missing Katie, I miss her so much. I just thought, like, sit here at night time and just think, what the fuck are you doing, Luke? You are, regardless of, the long trip, golden opportunity, yada, yada, yada. I am leaving the person I love the most for 1.5 years, possibly 2 years. What a selfish bastard. There is nothing more to be said about it.
You can see it in Ed every single day that you feel inferior. Your confidence is being bashed to the ground, and you just feel like, well, what the fuck am I doing now? What sorry sack of shit have I done to upset you this time,
On the morning of the 90th day of the expedition, Luke announces he's leaving.
Luke's just told me that he's decided to leave the expedition. We were both, I think, quite taken aback by the whole conversation, but he feels it's the right thing to do, and so he's going to go.
Walking in support of charities too, it's a huge wrench for Luke.
I've had to make a bold decision and remove myself and let Ed carry on his own, which I know he can do. I know he can complete this expedition on his own. He doesn't need me here.
Oh well, I think, actually, if I'm really, really honest, I think that the main reason he wants to leave is because he misses Katie too much.
Obviously going to have my head in shame, and there's no way of dealing with this other than accepting that shame, that guilt and so forth, and then trying to pick yourself back up, which I hope I can do.
I'm walking the Amazon on my own. Crikey.
The next 6,000 kilometers of river are Ed's to conquer, with just his guides for company. And this is the start of the deadly drug smuggling corridor, the Red Zone, where spider monkeys are a source of food. After his trekking companion abandoned the expedition, ex-soldier Ed Stafford is continuing his quest to be the first person to walk the length of the Amazon from the Peruvian Andes to the Atlantic coast, 7,000 kilometers east. In just over 3 months, Ed has traveled 1,170 kilometers, a feat in itself, but a fraction of the length of the Amazon. It's day 100, and Ed is now entering the Red Zone, a notoriously violent drug smuggling area leading to the Brazilian border, which he hopes to reach in another 4 months. The Apurimac now joins the Rio Eni. Ed and his guide Oswaldo will follow this river north at lower altitude along a patchwork of rainforest and jungle.
We don't even know really whether the path exists or whether we'll be bashing through the forest. Oh, this bit's nice. We're right in the heart of the Red Zone at the moment. The American military operating in this area now. Now, the locals here earn all their money from producing coca, and so that's not a very popular program to be carrying out here. Buenas tardes. And it even goes as far as the locals think that there's some sort of invasion plot by the Americans. Absolute nonsense, but unfortunately I look like an American.
The route is dotted with hundreds of towns and villages which are all touched by the criminal drug trade.
Buenas tardes, señor.
He spots coca plantations easily along the river valley. Few Westerners would ever attempt this without an armed guard.
Increasingly, every time we came to a community and we were asking for advice as to which the best way was to continue our journey, people were just saying, you can't come through here, this is ridiculous, you're going to get yourself killed.
Cars keep driving past and shouting things. The last car that just drove past shouted "Mata Mata Aki," which is you're gonna die here. So I don't think Oz is too amused about it, to be honest. ¿Tienes preocupaciones?
Ahora sí, mucho.
Yeah. Okay, within seconds of just saying to the camera, I think Oz might tell me he's leaving today. He's just told me he's leaving. So that's just me.
As Waldo has trekked with Ed since the start, but now has insisted he return immediately to the safety of his family.
That was the second part of a three-man team that said that they're not prepared to walk any further. And so at that point, I was then truly sort of on my own in terms of, and right in the middle of the red zone as well.
Ed is now forced to continue alone. He picks up day guides wherever he can. On top of anxieties regarding the coca industry, locals are suspicious of oil prospectors who have a reputation of destroying tribal lands.
¿Todavía no se aproxima a su comunidad?
The communities that we've been trying to radio ahead, that they're still trying to contact us, said that if even if we walk with two of the guides from this village, that they're going to kill us.
As he leaves, he becomes the victim of the first physical attack.
I've just had buckets of cement-filled water thrown all over me in that last place, and I don't want to cause alarm to these people, but they clearly think that I am a gringo who's coming in here in order to prospect for oil, and I'm not.
It was getting too dangerous on the tribal side of the river, the indigenous side, and so I needed to cross the river. The problem with the other side is that was the drugs trafficking side of the river, so I was feeling quite vulnerable.
The jungle is riddled with paths and roads used by traffickers, bringing unrefined cocaine from the plantations to be distributed through larger towns and cities to international destinations.
The amount that this bridge is sagging is comical.
The gangs do anything to protect their trade. Shotgun traps are set up to catch food and left to keep strangers out. Ed must make his way another 200 kilometers through this dense jungle before he is out of the red zone.
The profile is so big that you get caught on every single branch.
In a village near the jungle town of Satipo, Ed meets Cho, a 29-year-old local woodman who knows the drugs gangs and is willing to guide Ed through the red zone. Cho knows these routes well, but as they pass deeper into this territory, they also hire local armed guides.
The guys just back there told us to be very, very careful walking through here. They advised us to run.
Porque por esa zona donde había caminado habían matado, los narcos ya habían matado ya gente, incluso yo caminaba y a 2-3 horas más adelante ellos ya habían hecho crímenes ahí.
Soon enough, Ed stumbles across a processing plant for base cocaine paste. The wooden basins are filled with coca leaves and gasoline. Battery acid is added to this mixture to separate the coca base.
This sort of construction behind me is yet more proof that we're in a cocaine processing area.
The leaves are harvested 6 times a year. In this time, a single factory can produce hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of cocaine. 2/3 of the world's cocaine supply is produced in this region. The gangs involved don't like to be disturbed.
Pablo, our guide, has just basically told us that we need to wait here, and he's going to go ahead and talk to the people who have got a camp up ahead, so that we don't surprise them, basically, because they're very nervous of the police coming in.
After a nerve-wracking wait, it transpires the gang has heard about Ed's journey and they allow him to pass. For now, he's safe.
The man and woman just walked towards me and said, "Hello, Edward." Small-time fame, eh?
As the Eni meanders through the jungle, Ed begins to see the first signs of deforestation. He meets a gang of illegal loggers who float their stolen cargo towards the nearest heavy roads. The loggers live in the jungle for weeks on end and rely heavily on whatever illegal food they can catch.
I've eaten pretty much everything that's been put in front of me so far. But there's something invariably far more human about monkeys, and I've not eaten a monkey up to this point.
The spider monkey is charred on a fire to remove the fur. It's then cleaned in the river and chopped into pieces, ready for the cooking pot.
The spider monkey was clearly a mother, because its child is just behind me, tied up to that piece of wood, and that child will become a pet until it's big enough to eat. Initially, I was quite horrified by seeing the spider monkey, because it is obviously such a human-like form, and I was fascinated by the fact that these guys didn't have any qualms at all in eating a spider monkey. But I watched them prepare it and chop it up, and as I was watching this, I thought there's no difference between this animal to eating any other animal, really. And because it had been killed, and I was quite intrigued, I ended up eating that spider monkey as well. That's a bit of its tail. Quite nice, actually. Quite like that.
The loggers help him map the next part of his trek and treat him to some much-needed protein, including a rat-like agouti and a deadly catch of piranha. Well fed, Ed and Cho make great progress and finally reach the Tambo River. The red zone is behind them.
It's not often that we get a chance to actually walk by the river, surprisingly, for an expedition that's called Walking the Amazon. But it is actually quite rare, and it's lovely. It really does make me feel like I'm walking the river.
But they need to keep up the pace. It's now November, and the rainy season is due. Ahead, Ed and Cho are swamped as the mighty Amazon bursts its banks. Ed Stafford has been walking for 6 months in the upper tributaries of the Amazon River. Ed and his guide, Cho, continue trekking the Tambo and then the Ucayali River towards the Brazilian border. Over a further 3 months, they managed to cover another 1,500 kilometers. They pass the city of Iquitos and connect with the Rio Amazonas. But, as expected, in November, 240 days into his trip, the heavy rains begin. From now until May, this flooded section of the Amazon basin becomes a 350,000 square kilometer paddling pool. On average, the river rises by 10 meters.
November 2008. Progress is slow, I would say, today. There are very few areas where we're actually walking on dry land. It's pretty much all swamp land. The main reason everyone thought the expedition was impossible is that the Amazon basin is incredibly flat, which means that as soon as the water level rises in the main channel of the river, it then spills out into the forest, and it can spill out about 70 kilometers.
Caminar por las inundaciones, uno siente medio un poco de miedo. Nos hablan de las anguilas, hay peces eléctricas y como también.
This has got enough electricity in it to knock a man unconscious and therefore kill him by drowning. At one point, I thought, crikey, if it continues like this, then this is going to take the next 8 years of my life. This is.
As they move deeper into the flooded jungle, food becomes impossible to catch. Any source of protein is welcome.
Okay, we've been without meat now for 6 days, but now we've got a tortoise and a big tortoise in order to eat. Thank goodness. Absolutely no chance of the tortoise running away or hiding. It's just there, and we know it's there, and we'll come back for it when we want it. It isn't very humane at all. I'm not sure whether it's just a complete disregard for life or whether actually, more to the point, it's just very, very difficult to kill it beforehand because it is so well protected. Brucey bonus is that the tortoise is pregnant and has eggs. So we've not just got tortoise for supper, we've got eggs for breakfast. Yes! Tortoises were very abundant. We saw them a lot of the time, and they were a plentiful animal, and it was just something that we needed to do in order to survive.
Only indigenous people are allowed to hunt tortoise in Peru. The local guides make sure every edible part of the animal is consumed.
It has to be said, tortoise liver is absolutely extraordinarily good. Just incredible.
The next morning, the greatly anticipated breakfast of tortoise eggs is prepared.
A moment of truth. It's an egg yolk. Tastes like eggs.
The floods push Ed and his guides back from the main river channel towards higher ground. This forces him north towards Colombia and away from the Brazilian border. The 18-month expedition schedule is vanishing fast.
On the map, there's a contour line on this side of the river, and so we assumed that it would be high land, and it is. And I think things like contour lines are things that we can rely on because they don't change. I think we're on high ground from here on in.
The ground might be firmer, but the virgin rainforest is home to 135 species of snake.
As much as the risk of getting bitten and envenomated is slim, it's probably the biggest lethal threat that we had on the journey, I think. And so we carried polyvalent antivenom, which was for vipers. In the areas where there were lots of vipers, we were coming across vipers 2 or 3 times a day and almost stepping on them.
The pit viper, known as the silent bringer of death, kills up to 2,000 people a year in South America.
What the guys have just said is that they can't possibly leave this snake alive because it's right in the middle of a path, and if someone walks down here in half an hour, they could well die, so they're going to kill it now. You can see the huge retractable fangs that are the ones that deliver the venom.
As Ed and Cho enter Colombia, they meet the Tacuna people, one of the few tribes who weren't decimated by the Spanish invaders of the 1600s. The Tacuna still follow their old customs and are about to celebrate their own special ritual, the Pelazon, which is only carried out during a full moon.
Effectively, it was introduced to me as, do you want to go and see some of our local traditions? There's a young girl of 15 who's coming of age, and it's her party tonight. And I have absolutely no idea what to expect whatsoever. It was the most phenomenal sight I'd ever witnessed. I think in the whole journey I never saw anything culturally so bizarre. The girl who's got the crown on her head is clearly the girl who's coming of age. Been inside a makeshift enclosure 2 years since she started her menstrual cycle for the first time at the age of 13, and there's no windows, and she gets her food pushed through the door and she urinates into a bucket, and this is the first time she's been out and seen anybody apart from her immediate family who were allowed to enter for 2 years. After tomorrow she then becomes a woman and she continues her life normally. She was given the option whether she wanted to go through the traditional coming-of-age ceremony. She opted to do that, so it wasn't inflicted upon her, it was her decision. And then all of the young males in the community all got dressed up with huge false penises, with false blood on the end of the penises, and started running around, and what it looked like is they were trying to just freak her out. That was just me getting poked in the testicles by a large stick, which apparently you're meant to laugh at. This girl will apparently get up and she'll have her mask removed, and she'll walk alone for the first time. Apparently she'll sing and she'll dance. I find that quite unlikely given the state of drunkenness. Absolutely trolleyed she is. Essentially get her completely drunk out of her mind, and so she won't be able to remember anything. So our cultures aren't that dissimilar after all, really, are they?
He's walked 4,072 kilometers and has 3,128 to go, but the worst is still to come. Next time, Ed and Cho face the vast Brazilian rainforest. The remote jungle is the toughest terrain yet.
We're 90 kilometres from the next community,
and we have no food whatsoever, full stop.
It's a battle of life and death.
Wow, on Insight. Channel 5's 8 o'clock heroes are back tomorrow. The M1 isn't quite the Amazon, but it's still a tough job hauling Eddie Stobart's trucks and trailers. Don't miss it. Brand new tomorrow night at 8. Next tonight, Doctor Who he ain't, but you could call him Jean Time Claude Van Damme. Marvel as he tries to stop history being rewritten in Channel 5's Thursday Night Sci-Fi. Time Cop next.